Now we'll learn how to use constraints with animation layers. What we have in this scene is our yo-yo animation without any layers or any constraints added to the object. So let's go ahead and first constrain this yo-yo to the character's hand. What we'll do is select the ring, shift select the yo-yo, and choose point constraint under the constraint menu. Okay, just using the default settings here. The reason why the yo-yo has not been offset to match to the ring, if you're curious, is simply because I've moved the pivot of the ring to be aligned with the pivot of the yo-yo, so no offset would occur. Alright, so let's say if we wanted to now animate an offset while still keeping our constraint having control over this object. Well, before animation layers, what we need to do is animate with a blend node. So to show you what I'm talking about, that object selected on frame 1, we'll press Shift W. Notice the change of color in our attributes, letting us know that we've added keyframe animation on top of our constraint. And also notice we're given this blend attribute that we can use to animate between keyframe mode and the control of our constraint. So with this blend point, and that we're working with a point constraint, with that set to 0, notice our constraint is not going to be considered. Not until we set this blend attribute to 1. Alright, so taking this route, we have several things to be concerned with. Not only our transform keys, but at the same time how our blend attribute is controlled. So instead, let's go ahead and see how easy animation layers makes this process of adding just simple offsets on top of our constraints. I'll go ahead and undo back to before the keyframe was made. With our translate attribute selected, we'll go ahead and create an animation layer. I'll go ahead and bring up the floating window. We'll call this layer the yo-yo underscore pose for position offsets. Alright, great. So now that that has been made, we're ready to animate this yo-yo. And what we'll actually do is cycle this animation. So we'll go to the duration, the real duration of this animation, which is 25 for our playback end time. Let's type in. What we'll do now is go to frame 10 and we'll set a 0 key on this layer. So the yo-yo will stay in the character's hand. We'll go to frame 16 where the yo-yo should be released. Okay, we'll bring that down in the Y. We'll press Shift W. We'll go to about frame 22 and let's add a small offset here, bring it down a little bit more for a hold, and we'll also bring it a little bit over in the X. Press Shift W, and then we'll bring the yo-yo back to the hand on 25 using a 0 key. Alright, here's what we end up with if we were to hit play. Alright, so we're getting this nice yo-yo animation now. Alright, so from there, with the yo-yo still selected, let's go to our graph editor. We'll want to now cycle our keys. So let's go ahead and select their ends, and we'll flatten their tangency. Okay. Now this isn't always the case for achieving seamless cycles. We have our walk cycle training kit that goes over how to create seamless cycles if you're interested. But now that we've flattened these, I'm going to go ahead and now first show infinite curves under view, and then with our position offset layer selected, we can go to curves, pre-infinity cycle, and post-infinity cycle. Alright, so now that that's done, if we were to close out the graph editor, can now double click our range slider to get back to frame 300, and we'll press play. Now you'll notice that our cycle is a bit messed up. The reason why is because we need to add keys on frame 1. Of all of the attributes we've animated, because the duration of the cycle goes from 1 to 25, not 10 to 25. So on frame 1, we'll just go there and we'll set a 0 key. And now notice the animation is going to play back just fine. Alright, so we saw how simple it was now to add offsets on top of constraints using layers. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look now at another example. What we'll go ahead and do is create a locator. Let's set its size to about 20. If you can't see it, just go to the show menu and make sure that locators have been checked on. we'll also move this object to the side. Let's call this A. We'll duplicate this, move that object over in the X, and call this B. Alright, now that that's done, we'll take the B locator. Okay, we'll add it to a layer. So I'm going to bring back our layer editor. Okay, select the position attributes, create a layer. We'll call this layer B underscore constraint, being that we're about to add a constraint to this object. But before we do, we'll add a little bit of animation. So on frame 1, we'll press Shift W, and we'll move our locator over to the side. We'll press Shift W again. Let's go to our locator A and add a little bit of animation to this. So we'll press Shift W, go to frame 20 and bring this up. Press Shift W. Alright, and if you can't see the keyframes on this object, just right click on your timeline and make sure under your display key ticks you have it set to something like affected, all affected. Alright, so now that that's done, we'll add our constraint. So selecting A first, we'll select B, and we'll choose constraint point. Alright, so we lose that offset that we got from the B locator. So let's go ahead and get that back. What we want to do is go to our outliner, so we could just select the B object, and we'll create another layer with the same attributes. Okay, so we'll just create a new layer. We'll call this B blend, because we're going to be working with the blend node now of this layer. Now that that's done, let's go to Window, and we'll open up our hypergraph. So we're going to be working with some connections here. Back to our layer editor, let's go ahead and under the layer menu choose package to containers, which is going to take all of these layers and contain them. So if we were to view our incoming outcoming connections, we can see that it has been organized very well for us. Now what we want to do is not only look for our pair blend node, okay, which is created after we have added keyframe animation on top of a constraint. What we want to do is go ahead and access our point constraint as well. So let's go ahead and select the B blend, and we'll view its incoming outcoming connections. We'll move B blend over to the side, the pair blend node over as well, and the point constraint. Now let's go ahead and work on some connections here, where we take the point constraint and constrain its constraint translates to our blend translate nodes. Let's double click our blend container and double click the blend nodes container within. Alright, so here's translate X, Y, and Z. Now what we'll want to do is select our point constraint, go to the corner till our icon changes, so we can right click now and add our constraint translate, which is under triple. Go to triple and we'll go to constrain and we'll choose X. Now let's go ahead and right click on top of the X blend node and go to other, because we basically want to connect it to the input B. So make sure on the left side that we have show non-keyable turned on, so we can just get right to our constraint translate and expand that. On our right side, we could just make sure that, again, that option's on as well. We'll select the translate X and connect that to the input B, okay, of our X blend node. Alright, now we'll select the Y. We'll reload that on our right side, the input side. We'll select the constraint Y, connect that to the input B. We saw the type of connection that has been made looking at our channel box. And let's go ahead and do this one more time for the Z node. So with that selected, we'll reload that, select Z, and connect that to input B. Now we can comfortably go in and take our pair blend node and delete that, and watch what happens if we were to just minimize the animation editor, minimize the hypergraph. What we now get is a blend between the side-to-side movement of this B locator and the up and down movement of our A locator. So that is very cool. Now how about animating on top of this object? What if we wanted to reposition it? Well, to do that, we'd simply, with it selected, just select those attributes once again, create another layer. Okay, going back to our layer editor, I'll call this B underscore offset. And now it's just a matter of taking this object, moving it where we like it to be, and setting a keyframe. Shift W. And now notice the object has been offset exactly where we like it to be. So that's a quick look at working with constraints and animation layers. We have a lot of power here to work with when it comes to working with those two different tools. Now, a limitation with constraints is basically we couldn't, again, export a constraint layer out. We'd have to bake that down as well. Also, if you were to ever reconnect your constraint, okay, after you've added offsets, you'd lose those offsets, so you just need to create a layer on top of that and add offsets again. All right, but that's no problem at all, and we've kind of went through that in this lesson. So, again, that's a quick look at how we can work with constraints and animation layers for efficiency.